Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Triumph Beyond Trauma and the first for season 2. I can't believe that we are in a second season and this one is gearing up to be amazing. I have some wonderful guests lined up for the season and I've already recorded a few episodes. We also have a couple of guest experts as well, which I am thrilled about. I've decided to run the podcast in seasons of 10 episodes for a couple of reasons, but the main one being that I need to be mindful of my own energy, my mental health, and my capacity at all times. It's something that is super easy for me to become hyper focused on projects, and that can sometimes be at the detriment of my mental health, which then flows onto my personal life, and I don't want that, and neither does my family. So I'll schedule in breaks during the year. Hopefully, I'm going to be successful in aligning the episodes with the school terms here in New South Wales from term 3. But I'm going to see how that goes. The podcast has reached over 500 downloads, which absolutely blows my mind. I know I don't have that many friends, so there must be other people who are listening too. And for that, I'm so grateful. The thing I wanted to achieve with this podcast is to give people hope when they're in their darkest days or even just in a bit of a funk and want a little motivation to get themselves back on track again. And for them to feel a little less alone and have stories that will resonate with them. Podcasting is a tricky medium. I am learning very quickly to get feedback in relation to this. And I was absolutely thrilled when a listener went out of their way to find me on Instagram and to send me a message to say just that they are loving the podcast, they're resonating with the stories, and it's nice to be able to listen to what other people have been through and it's sounding just like their own journey. So thank you to that person. It made my week and it absolutely gives me the motivation to bring more stories from people just like us. It is time for this week's episode and absolute legend guest, Sean Phillip from the Shaka Project. Sean is the founder and director of the Shaka Project, a mental health charity created to ignite the conversation around mental health and suicide awareness. Sean is a real life experienced suicide survivor, speaker, and passionate father that is striving for a new stigma and change in the statistics around suicide in Australia. As always, I will link to Sean and the Shaka Project in the show notes. And if you would like to donate to the Shaka Project, please head over to his website and grab a t-shirt, a hoodie, a hat, or gift one to a friend and let's ignite the conversation. I have to mention there is a strong content warning for this episode. Sean and I will be discussing suicide ideation and attempt. So please, if this is something that is not for you, you can give this episode a miss or skip over from about the 27-minute mark, and maybe I'd skip over for about 10 minutes. With all of that said, please enjoy this amazing episode with a very generous Sean Phillip. Welcome to Triumph Beyond Trauma, the podcast that explores journeys of resilience and hope. I'm Rosie Skene, a yoga and breathwork teacher and founder of Tactical Yoga Australia. As a former soldier's wife, mum to 3 beautiful kids and a medically retired New South Wales police officer with PTSD, I understand the challenges of navigating mental health in the first responder and veteran community. Join us for incredible stories from individuals who've confronted the depths of mental illness and discovered their path to happiness and purpose, as well as solo episodes and expert discussions. Together, we'll uncover the tools to help you navigate your journey toward a brighter, more fulfilling life. Whether you're looking for helpful insights, practical tips, or just a friendly reminder that you're not alone, Triumph Beyond Trauma has got your back. You matter, and your journey to a happier, more meaningful life starts right here. Welcome to the podcast, Sean. Thank you so much for coming on.
No problem. Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to talk to you because you're doing some really amazing things for not only men's mental health, but I know women's mental health as well. You're probably not intentional about that, but I personally love looking at all your stuff. So thank you so much. I was wondering if we could start maybe just by talking about your history and how you've come to be where you are.
Yeah, absolutely. So I suppose my mental health journey started when I was 12 years of age, and it started from a conversation with my father, and it was a conversation that I really I look back on now, and I can pretty much sum up that this 10-minute conversation shaped where I am today, and it's a big reason that I'm doing what I'm doing today. And that conversation was he sat myself and my brother down and he looked us both in the eyes, and we thought we were in trouble. We thought we were getting a bit of a rap for something. But he sat us down and he said that Dad's sick, Dad's unwell. And as a 12-year-old, I remember sitting there, and the only real illnesses and sicknesses that I knew of were cancer and stroke. That took my grandparents a few years before. So, I was really hyper vigilant when we sat down, and he started to say, Dad's sick. And then he continues to talk, and he said, Dad's got this thing, it's called depression. And as a 12-year-old, as soon as I heard that it wasn't cancer, I just switched off. It didn't mean anything to me. He went on to say that, it just means that sometimes Dad's going to be a really good dad. Sometimes Dad may not be a great dad. Sometimes Dad may not be here. And it's going to be pretty tough, but, Dad's going to get through it. And again, ignorant 12-year-old, I just thought, okay, well, it's not cancer. It's not a stroke, which took granddad and nan. So let's switch off. That's nothing. I don't know what this thing is, but he said that it's not going to take him away. So let's move on. And over the next couple of years, I really started to see the effect that this thing called depression had on him, had on my mother, had on myself and my brother. And, there would be days and weeks where, I would just notice that Dad was different. It was really hard to connect with Dad. He would often be really, really quiet. He'd often be really, really sad. And I'd started to understand this a little bit more and started to, really realize that this thing that he called depression, although it wasn't taking him away, it was having a massive impact on him. So this went on for years and years. And when I got to the age of 15 and I started to experience my own mental health and started to experience feelings of, not wanting to go to school and, just being generally unhappy and considering self-harm and things like this, a really magical thing happened is that I was able to recognize what that was, all because I had that conversation with my father when I was 5 years old. So when I started to experience these feelings, not only was I able to recognize, hey, this is mental health, this is what Dad has, but I was also able to say, okay, well, if Dad can talk about it to us, then that means I can talk about it. And that's probably the best gift that he's ever given me. I was able to go and speak to him and speak to Mum and go to a doctor and get on a mental health care plan. And, I was jumping on medication at the age of 15, 16. And that was, I suppose, the start of my real mental health journey. Now, as anyone that's been or suffered mental health knows that, you can go on a mental health care plan and you may utilize medication or seek support, but unfortunately that doesn't make it all go away. It's something that's been with me every single day for the last 15 years. And, every single day since that first moment I've suffered with mental health, whether it be really great mental health or really poor mental health too. So that was essentially the start of it. That was where I really started to understand what this thing was, and it really started to impact my life. And I can, very, very proudly say that my father is still with us today, although he's suffered a lot in his life. I'm extremely grateful that he is still with us because he's been through a hell of a lot. But it's also created a relationship between him and I that we have this real connection when it comes to mental health. We understand each other a little bit more than, even my mother and I, we clash like nothing else. But, my father and I have this connection through mental health because we have this understanding of it as well, and this sort of empathy and, I suppose, personal contribution towards it too. So that really motivated me to want to try and get this conversation and normalize the conversation, because I could see so many of my friends throughout high school that were suffering and were struggling but just didn't talk, especially men. And, post high school, I was lucky enough to get into fitness and personal training. So that was my career before this. And I opened a couple of gyms, and I was a personal trainer for 13 years and a gym owner throughout Victoria. And that was great. It was really good for, my own mental health and my own sort of, life and experience and career and stuff like that too. But throughout that period, that mental health was still there every single day. And although that I was speaking around it, and although I was very open about my mental health, there were still attempts throughout that period. There were still many months after months where I just didn't want to be here. I went through what we talk about often, which is the crisis mode or the crisis stage. And, to put that crisis mode or crisis stage into a bit of a brief, it's essentially where somebody is completely comfortable and completely at ease with the thought of self-harm or suicide. And it's a really scary place to be. It's a really scary place. And unfortunately, as we sit here and talk today, there's many people across Australia and the world that are in this stage right now. So throughout that sort of crisis mode that I've been in before, there was some really scary moments. There's some moments where, if it wasn't for a little thing, I wouldn't be here today. If it wasn't for some sort of miracle, I wouldn't be here today. But throughout those times as well, it helped me understand that this is going to be a really hard battle when it comes to mental health, and it's going to be every single day, and I'm going to have to work on it every single day too. So that's essentially the start of the whole progress of why I wanted to do it. I wanted more people to talk. I wanted more people to seek support. There was a stage where, every single time I jumped on social media, I was seeing somebody else who was died by suicide, and it's just heartbreaking. It's just awful. It's just such a terrible, real aspect of Australian life that we're living in, that there's not enough attention to those people that we lose. There's not enough love shown to people just in general in our life to, just to possibly prevent that as well. I think that's a really big subject that I really like to push. And, you've probably seen on our social media, I'm very much pushing, just love people and love your mates and love your family and love your friends and show as much love as we possibly can, because we never know what today or tomorrow is going to bring. So I suppose to answer your question, a very long term, that's my motivation right now today is that I've got a beautiful 6-year-old daughter who's my best friend, and she inspires me every single day to get up and do this and continue to have these conversations and do this kind of work. But also a big inspiration for me is that, I want to be able to, in 10 years' time, be out of work. In 10 years' time, the conversation around mental health is so strong, it's so normalised, that we're able to have it in schools, we're able to have it in sporting clubs or in the media, and that we're just working on the idea that, right, this is a very real thing. Let's do what we can to change those statistics, to save our mates. That's another big thing, and just to continue this conversation on too. So, there's so many motivations there and so many reasons. So many of my whys are directed towards my little story, which I'm happy to talk about. But it's definitely something that has changed my life over the last 5 years for the better. You would know yourself, being in this industry, it's a heartbreaking industry as well. You put yourself out there to help people, but unfortunately, majority of the people that I see come through the Shaka Project, whether it be through just being a supporter or a customer or someone that wants to work with us, majority of those people are doing it because they've lost someone or they've almost lost themselves. So you look at, I used to run gyms. My customer base was people that want to improve themselves and get fit and might lose a bit of weight for a wedding or an occasion. And then to create a shift from that to almost the complete opposite of people coming through to me and saying, hey, I've just lost my husband, or, I don't want to be here anymore. What can I do? That was a huge shift. That was a massive shift in my life, and it was really tough, and it still is tough, but it's something that I have a massive passion for, as a lot of people do in this mental health space. And I think if we can just continue to, really show that empathy for people, everyone, every single person that suffers or experiences poor mental health, then we can really make a difference. So I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, it totally does.
Get into it. I've been talking for 2 hours. So.
Yeah, I love that though. And so many of your whys are if not very similar, like the exact same as mine, And I really love that your dad sat you and your brother down and had that conversation. One of the topics I would like to talk about one day is talking about mental health with your children, and you touching on that's really great, because I know myself talking about, I had to work out, my kids were so small. The boys were 6 and 4, and my daughter was 3 months old when I was diagnosed. And it's sort of finding that time when it's not a big scary thing, and putting it in terms that they understand, and how do you have the conversations. So at 12 years old, obviously that's a great age, because you can sort of understand, even though you checked out a little bit, it's a good age. But it's so important to involve your family in your journey as well, because you can't do it alone.
Yeah,
And
absolutely.
and just, even if they aren't supportive, like just them knowing they can be supportive in that way, like just have a little bit of empathy and understanding for you, and what you might be going through. And then even for yourself, having your own troubles, like you said, and then having that relationship with your dad, and him having that understanding of how shit it is. Yeah, obviously would bring you nice and close together, and you have that, thing that you can talk about together. So yeah, that's amazing. I think that's such a beautiful thing, out of
Yeah,
such out of something that's not great at all, but like something beautiful can come from it.
you're 100% right. My dad's a very, very humble, and whenever I read this to him, he sort of just sits there and goes a bit shy. But the impact that that conversation had on me and my family. But it's a really scary thing, especially being a father. My daughter looks at me as Superman. I'm the strongest man in their life. I'm dad. What if I've got a problem, dad will fix it.
Yeah.
So to be able to sit there and say, hey, babe, like sometimes dad gets sad, and sometimes daddy might be having a really bad day, and sitting there and crying, and being open with, when she was getting a little bit older, I was petrified of that. I was like, this girl thinks I'm Superman, but I've got days where I feel like I'm definitely not Superman. And then I start to, remember back to that conversation that I had with dad and what impact it had on me. And, I think it's really, really powerful to be able to have those conversations with them when they're young. It doesn't change the way that she looks at me. It doesn't change the way that she feels about me. And, if anything, I think it brings us a lot closer. Even, when I was putting her to bed last night, we had a really beautiful conversation. She was telling me that, there was a girl in her class that was saying a few mean things to her. And, as a parent, that breaks your heart, because you're just like, oh my God, who hurt you? I would say, hey, look, most people that are saying mean things might be hurting themselves. I use this terminology with her that people throw rocks at shiny things. And I told her that she's the shiniest thing in the world. So that took her a little bit to understand what it meant. But we were able to sort of have that conversation, and then I was able to talk about, how did you feel when this happened? And, it's okay to feel a little bit sad when that happens, and try and understand from her point of view and allow her to talk. And I think that's that validation. I talk about validation a lot, and what dad does to me as well when it comes to validation is amazing. And I've got a bit of a story about that, and I think, which is something that a lot of people can take a lot from. And it was last year, I was going through a bit of a rough patch, and I remember sending a really, really long text message to my mum and my dad separately. And my mum's a fixer. So she, whenever I go to her about something, she'll send me like a list of 1,000 things to do just to fix it. And, that's fine, but it stresses me out. So I sent a message to mum and dad, just going through all my feelings, what I was experiencing, how I was going, what I was going through. And my mum replied back with, all right, Sean, you need to get back to focusing on work, get back to the gym, get back to this, get back to that. And I read it, and it stress me out. I thought, oh, okay, well, I'm already suffering all this stuff. Now I have to do all this sort of stuff. And about 10 minutes later, my dad replied back to me, and he said 3 words. And all he said was, I get it. And as soon as I read those 3 words, this weight off my shoulders was enormous. And I was able to say, thank God somebody gets it. Somebody understands what I'm feeling is real, and what I'm experiencing is actually valid. And I think that's a really, really important thing. Whenever I do presentations and events, I talk about it for a lot, about when we ask a question or when we check in with a friend or a family member, um, validating those emotions, even if we don't understand it, like you said before, just validating it and say, hey, I'm not experiencing what you're experiencing, but if you're experiencing it, then it's absolutely real. And that can allow people to just feel a little bit safer, to feel like that what they're experiencing really does matter and that they can go and seek support about it or they can go talk about it. The majority of us have these things that are going on in life and we always say somebody has it worse or it's not that important or it's not that big. But, when it comes down to whatever you're experiencing, it matters enough to talk about, it matters enough to seek support about, and it matters enough to take action on as well with whatever you're going through. So I think that's really important. So yeah, with kids, it's really tough. I actually wrote a book for my daughter last year, all about feelings. It's called Riley's Balloons. So I think that was my sort of conversation with her that Dad had with me. So I'm hoping she'll keep that book forever and she can read it whenever she goes to bed. And it's just a little bit more of understanding our feelings and knowing that it's okay to talk about our feelings. And it's very, very kid friendly. It's a rabbit bouncing through the forest with all our friends. So it's something that I really wanted to do for her, just to make sure she knew going forward throughout her life that those feelings are very, very real and it's okay to experience them.
Yeah, that's so beautiful. I think, when you say that you want to open up the conversation, that's exactly how we do it, is talking to kids, because they're going to grow up and they're going to have their friends and they're going to make it okay for their friends to have those feelings as well and have that empathy and support for them, and even being able to pick it up with their friends, especially like my son's 13 now, my oldest one, and he's in high school and he has, very real high school problems and friends and all the stuff that goes on with that. And I do the same thing as you, like if someone projects something onto him, I'm like, is it actually you, mate? Or is it something that might be going on in their life and they're not sure how they can deal with it? So they take it out on someone that they know is still going to be their friend tomorrow. And yeah, so, and it's not always about you. It's not always you. There's something else going on there. And it helps, yeah, especially the kids in high school, and I know you do a lot of work in high schools.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think high school is in a really those years right now and is a really unique spot where when I was in high school, the mental health conversation was non-existent.
Same.
We used to have a counselling area at school, but I suppose as students, when we saw people go in there, our first instinct was, they're in trouble or they're a little bit crazy. That was our first instinct. We didn't know about mental health or depression or anxiety or anything like that. And, fast forward 10, 15 years, when we look at high schools now, whenever I go into high school now, they've got all these different services, they've got all these different programs set up for wellness and stuff like that too. But when it comes to the mental health of kids aged between 12 and 18, there's still a massive gap there. There's a really, really big barrier. And one of the biggest influences there is social media. Social media can be amazing. It can be something that can get a message extremely loud. Like, our social media is the reason that I'm able to do what I do, because we've been able to push so many positive messages. But I've recently got off my personal Instagram because it's just there's so many negative stuff out there at the moment. So you've got to take a break every now and then. But yeah, I think it's a really, really important time throughout high school to have those conversations. I remember when I was in high school, we always used to have guest speakers in, and they would always be talking about drugs and alcohol and the impact of these different things. And I remember sitting there and going, okay, well, this is, I get this, but I'm in year 9. Like, I haven't had a drop of alcohol. I don't even know how to get drugs or what drugs are. But at the same time, I had a dad at home that was suffering depression and nobody was talking about it. So I think it's really important to, even if we can get into schools and say, hey, this thing is very, very real. These are some signs that you can look out for, whether it be for yourself or for somebody else, but also for young boys to have that conversation with their mates so that they can feel safe in the environment that they're in, whether it be at school or just in their friendship group, that they can have something traumatic happening in their life. And some boys are still scared to cry in front of their mates. I used to do it all the time. I remember in year 10 when I just had a really bad day and I started crying in front of my best mate. And the names that he called me were, I don't think I could even repeat on the podcast, but I'm still best mates with him and he's apologised for that. He understands a little bit more now, but I think that was just the sign of the times. And unfortunately, that hasn't changed a whole lot, but it's something we can change. It's something that we can have those conversations with our young men and women about the changes that are going to happen in their life and the impacts of drugs and alcohol when they do leave high school, or if they're in high school, when it comes to mental health and all those different things too. So I think kids in high school these days have got it a lot harder than what you and I probably did, because of social media, because of the pressures of everything that's happening throughout the world. So I think we need to show them empathy and a bit of understanding too. There's a bit of a hatred on young kids when they get up to no good, which I don't think is really beneficial to them whatsoever. I think we need to, try and embrace them and try to understand what they're going through instead of telling them they're just doing wrong. Understand what's happening and what's going on at home and what they're going through.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, a lot more understanding, and something, kids are kids and they do some weird stuff, but it's something that I really remind myself, and I tell my friends the same thing when they're like losing it a bit at their kids, especially the teenagers. It's their first rodeo. Like it's all of our first rodeos really, but they don't even have, their brains aren't even fully formed yet. And that's the other thing. They could be going through these things like yourself and having mental illness at a really young age, and their brains still haven't, fully matured into an adult brain. So to have that on top of everything else that they've got to go through, like you said, social media and outward expectations and school expectations from their teachers and their home, and then, if their home life isn't that good, like there's a lot for kids that they have to deal with these days. And it's certainly a lot more than what I had to deal with.
A good way to look at it is, I think everyone can say that they've looked on their Facebook memories of like a post they did 10 years ago and they think, what was I thinking? Why would I post something like that? Because back then it seemed right. Back then that's what we thought, and that's our ideology, and that's what we were going through, and all these sort of things too. So we'll be younger, we were probably a little bit dumber.
Yeah.
So we weren't, grown into ourselves and matured and stuff like that too. It's the same thing with the kids, you think, why is a 15-year-old doing this or a 16-year-old doing this? Because that's what they're thinking, that's what they're going through. So I think if we do show that understanding and that empathy, we do a little bit of work with justice, and that's that could be a whole new podcast about what's going on in New South Wales and Queensland with the youth crime and all that sort of stuff too. But there's so many different avenues we can go through when it comes to mental health and these different things and what these kids have experienced throughout their life. There's some kids that are 15 that, both their parents are in jail. They've grown up around drugs and alcohol every single day of their life. And then, we wonder why they're going down the dark roads. It's pretty evident. So it's something pretty scary. But if we have that empathy and understanding for these kids and try and just ignite these different conversations, then we can really make a difference in it.
I totally agree. Like the kids, that's where we've got to start with. Absolutely. Is there anything in particular that helped you on your mental health journey? Like I know that you said, you're a personal trainer and you worked out a lot. Is there anything else that you found has helped you, especially in those moments where you have been suicidal and you've said that you've had those little glimmers, like there's just been that one thing that's changed your mind?
There's probably not one, thing that has been able to sort of keep me going. We have our motivations, we have our drives, we have our reasons to stay and stuff like that too. But I think the idea of something next is really big for me. So if I go back to, it's a story I don't mind telling because it's pretty impactful on me. But one of my attempts was about 8 years ago, and about 8 years ago, I was in my car and I was in this crisis mode I spoke about before. I had this ideology that, I had no care in the world for if I was to self-harm or if I was to suicide. I wasn't scared of that. I wasn't scared of harming myself or of the pain of harming myself. And, it would get to the time where, if I went down to Melbourne and I stayed in, a high-rise hotel, the first thing I would do is go to a window and think, this would be perfect. This would be a great place to do it. And it was just like thinking, what's bigger tonight? Just like thinking who's playing for me on the weekend. That's how deep a lot of people are in right now. And that's exactly what I was in. Every moment of every day, I was just thinking about this. And there was almost a moment, in fact, I remember this moment when I was sitting there and I kind of just accepted the fact. I accepted that it may not be today, it may not be tomorrow, but I will die by suicide. And at the time, I think back to it now, I'm like, that's unbelievable. But at the time, I just accepted it, and I didn't accept it going, oh my God, that's terrifying. I just said, yep, that's just the way it's going to be. And this Sunday afternoon, I was in my car and I was sitting there and I was on the side of the road and I was just, in tears and really, really distraught. And I remember looking up at my front windscreen, and about 50 metres away was a really, really big tree on the side of the road. And that mindset and that thought again went through my mind. And first thing I thought was, I think this would be a great place to do it. All you have to do is just go straight, as fast as you can, and then aim stop. And that's exactly what I did. I put to the floor, both hands on the steering wheel, closed my eyes, and what felt like 5 minutes turned into about 5 seconds, and then massive crash. All I remember was opening my eyes, and the first thing I realised was, one, that I was still alive, and then the second thing I said to myself was, "You are an absolute idiot," and I may have thrown a few swear words in between. You are an idiot, but I wasn't saying it because of what I've just done. I was saying it because I couldn't even get this right. I was so mad at myself that all I had to do is go straight and get this free, and I couldn't even do that. And that was a really big pivotal moment for me because I sat there for about 30, 40 minutes, screaming at myself, hating myself so much for not being able to do this. And then I had a bit of a shift of, okay, why didn't this work? Why didn't this happen? It was super straightforward, go straight and do this. And I realised that I've missed this tree. I'm about 25 centimetres away from this tree in shrubs and the bushes. So when I got out of the car, I walked around the back of the car, and I saw that when I was parked, I couldn't see over this ridge that was just before the tree off the road. And as I went over this ridge, I bounced off a ditch that was just behind the tree and just knocked myself out of the way of the tree. And, it's the kind of stuff that you see on movies, kind of stuff that, if I did that again today, it just wouldn't happen. And I'm not religious whatsoever, but when I saw that happen, I thought, right, there's going to be a reason there. There's going to be something that means. There's going to be a reason that, this has happened and I'm still here today. And, that was 8 years. That was 8 years ago, and I was able to go and seek some support after that. And it was a really pivotal moment for me because a couple of years later, when my daughter was born, I finally understood the reason. I finally understood, why I missed a tree. I didn't miss a tree so I could do all this work, although I love this work. I love being able to do all these different events and travel and all that sort of stuff. I missed the tree because a couple of years later, my daughter's going to come into the world and she's going to bring happiness to grown-ups. And she has this really, really special ability that, every single room that she's in, she just makes people smile. And, when I see her do that, I just think back, right, that's why I missed the tree. That's why I missed the tree. And so I suppose when I was sitting in that car, when I was looking ahead, I didn't see that future. I didn't see her. And that's the biggest impactful thing for me that I talk about as much as I possibly can, because a lot of people, when they're in that moment of making that decision to take their own life, they don't see that. They don't see their future. And that's not their fault. It's just how deep they're in. So, when I go to events or when I talk to football clubs or work in communities or work sites, I talk about that a hell of a lot, because if I can embed that into their minds, and if one day they're in that moment where they've made the decision, they're sitting in that car metaphorically, that can trigger in their brain and say, hey, my future needs me. And something that I can't see just yet, it needs me here. And it's going to be really, really hard. It's going to be really, really tough. But that needs me. So I think that's probably the biggest trigger for me and the biggest reason why I'm still here and keeps me going. Since then, unfortunately, I have gone back into crisis mode a few times, and I have gotten close to that too. And every single time I've been sitting there, I've made the decision, and I think back to that, right, I've got my daughter, she's beautiful, she's my life. I've experienced X amount of years with her. What's next? I want to see her get married. I want to see her, go through life and go to high school and experience all these different things and do life with her. And that's enough to pull me out. Unfortunately, some people aren't that lucky. We see all the time of losing mothers and fathers. And it's heartbreaking. It's absolutely heartbreaking. That's probably what affects me the most when I see that we've lost fathers or mothers, because I know that in that moment, they're definitely thinking about their kids, but it's just that extra inch that they need to get them over that line and say, right, I need to go home, or I need to go to the hospital, or I need to call someone, or I need to go seek some support. And unfortunately, we can't get everyone across that inch. So I think the importance of talking about our future and talking about what tomorrow could bring is really important. It's something that hopefully people can have in the back of their mind and subconsciously, so if they're ever in that moment, they can just get over that inch and they can just say, right, I want this pain to stop, but my future does need me, so I need to go and seek some support, or call the hospital if I need to, call someone to come and get me and get them across that line. So I suppose that's my reason, that's my motivation, and that's something that keeps me going every single time I get low is that pretty little girl that I want to see her. Although I don't want her to have a boyfriend ever, that's just how I am.
It's not allowed.
And she still says it on her boyfriend, so I'm happy with that.
That's cute.
Although, that scared the hell out of me, and even her growing up scared the hell out of me. I don't want to miss it.
Just on what you were talking about before, the whole motivation of even starting a podcast like this is for that, to give people the hope and inspiration, I guess, that might not be tomorrow, but there are really good days that you can have in your life that are ahead that you don't even know about yet. And I love what you said, like your future needs you. Something in your future needs you. And it's just so special. And I personally, I've never been in that situation, which I'm really grateful for. So I can't even begin to think about how hard that is. Every time I hear about someone, especially, in the area that I like to be in, police and veterans, and the suicide rates there are bad, and what must be going through their minds at that moment would be horrendous. So if we can, like you say, have those voices and normalize it for people, and let everyone know that, there's good days ahead as well. It might not be easy, but there will be.
Yeah.
So I really thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's so important just to, whatever it might be, it might be children, it might be, just some little moment. I remember I've had moments just with, my best friend where we're sitting there having a very passionate footy, and we, start laughing and going crazy about something ridiculous, silly. And, just in that 30 seconds, you feel just amazing. You feel incredible. You feel on top of the world, and everything else you just forget about for a little bit. And they're the moments that, we don't see in the future. That's one thing no one will ever have the ability to have. So if we can give people that hope to say, hey, tomorrow might be your best day of your life, or in 5 years you might have a 3-year-old daughter running around, or a 3-year-old son, looking at you like you're the best person on the planet. They're the moments, and they're the hope, I suppose, that if we keep encouraging, then, hopefully we can start to change those statistics and save more people. And I've got one of our ambassadors that she lost her husband about 2 years ago, and she's got they have two beautiful little girls as well, and she's always said to me, it's not that he wanted to die, it's that he just didn't want the pain anymore. And I think although it's a really hard thing to think about, it's so true, because the majority of people that do die by suicide, they don't want that foreverness. They don't want to actually not be here anymore. But sometimes that change is just too much, and it can be really tough for people to understand. It can be really tough for people to think, well, why would you just go see carbon? Why would you just do that? But it's a really, really tough thing to be vulnerable. It's a very, very tough thing to go and seek support and talk about what's going on. A lot of that has to do with that stigma that's been created for the last, 150, 200 years around mental health. We don't talk about it.
Yeah.
So I think we're in an amazing space right now where we can take that stigma, roll it out, create a new one, and really start talking about it too. So I think we're in that pivotal moment. My grandfather passed away about 20 years ago, and my dad always tells me that if he was still around today and he knew that my job was to go around the country talking about his feelings, he'd smack me one, like he would be. There's no way that his grandson will be doing that. Yeah, that doesn't make him a bad man. That just means that he grew up in a time where you don't talk about feelings, especially as a man. You got on with it. You go out there, you work. He did some work in World War II, so he had that ideology of go out there, be a man, be strong. And the other reason he had that is because the father before him had that, and the father before him had that. So ignorance is taught down the line, and the best thing about that is that we can reteach and we can create new stigma.
Yeah. And how beautiful that your dad was the one to do that too. Break
Exactly
the
right.
cycle.
Yeah, that's exactly what I did. As much as I tell him he can't accept
Yeah.
he can't accept it, but he definitely did.
Yeah.
For sure.
So I think that's a really great way that we can start talking about the Shaka Project and the amazing work that you're doing there. So when did you start up?
So it started in 2019, and throughout running all the gyms and personal training and stuff, I constantly did fundraisers for mental health. So we did like a 23-hour treadmill challenge. We did like a push-up challenge, just different fundraisers. I just wanted to keep raising funds and awareness. And I remember one day, actually it was after the 24-hour treadmill challenge, we raised a pretty significant amount of money for a charity, and I won't name the charity, but when I donated this money, it was about $10,000 we raised. When I donated these funds, I got a really generic email back, and it just said, thanks for your donation. And I looked at it, and I remembered back to that event where we had people, showing their vulnerability. I was in tears 23 hours of the 24 hours. People were giving up their hard-earned time, hard-earned money, and we just got this email back. And I saw that and I thought, right, that kind of sucks. What can I do to make more of a personal impact? That I can see personal impact on people, not just in where I was living, but everyday Australians, the person who runs a milk bar, the bloke who's a footy coach, the mum that has, a single mother of 4 kids that's doing her best, all these different things. How can we have that personal impact on it? So I had this idea for a long time, and it pondered and it went to my brain a million times. What can I do? How can I do it? And then I realized, what about if we make a conversation starter and we make it a t-shirt? So we put a conversation starter on a t-shirt and we put it out there and we essentially say, hey, if you wear this t-shirt, this means that you have empathy and have understanding for mental health. And it's going to allow people to see you and say, right, if I'm ever struggling, I can go and talk to that person about mental health. So I get permission for it. And so when I first thought of that, the next step was, what can we call it? And it goes back to when Riley's older brother, so my stepson, he was at the playground one day, him and I, and he came off the slide and he hit the dirt pretty hard. And I was being a really bad stepfather at the time, and I was scrolling on my phone, not really paying attention. And I remember looking up and seeing him and thinking, do I have to go over and see if he's okay, or is he going to be all right? And I remember he stood up, he brushed himself off, and he looked over to me and threw a shaka. I threw a shaka back, and he kept on playing. And I thought that was a really cool way that we communicated without necessarily using words. And that's exactly what is the hardest thing about mental health, is opening that conversation, starting that conversation. So I thought, right, let's chuck a shaka on all our t-shirts. Let's use this as a conversation starter, as something that we can talk about, and start a conversation. So that's what I did. I remember I bought my last $1,500 into these t-shirts. My partner at the time was absolutely furious with me because we're on holidays and we're in Cairns. And I just said, hey, we've got no money at the moment because I just bought all these t-shirts. She was not happy with me at all. But I just had this feeling, I had this idea that this could make a real big impact. And these t-shirts took like 4 weeks to get in. I was super stressed. I had no idea if this was going to be a thing. And I remember launching it on Facebook, and within probably 8 hours, all the t-shirts were sold out. We had shares, all across Australia in this Facebook status, over 10,000 shares on this Facebook status. I had orders from, all over New South Wales, all over Queensland, all over Victoria, all over Australia. And I didn't even know how to send something. I didn't even know how to use Australia Post. I've sent a few postcards and letters and stuff before.
So
I'm like,
fun.
I'll send a t-shirt. What do I do there? So that was a really wild 48 hours. I thought it was going to be something, I'm originally from Ballarat, I thought it was going to be something in Ballarat that we could all get behind. And through the power of social media, I was all of a sudden sending t-shirts to New South Wales and to Queensland and to South Australia and all over Australia. So when I saw how many people wanted to get behind it, I really started to understand, right, this is bigger than just me. This is bigger than just, just Ballarat and just the people here that want to start this conversation. So I really 10x'd it. I put everything I had into it. I still had the gym at this time. So I was doing sort of both, and I was doing the Shaka as a bit of a passion project, and I was able to grow it into essentially a t-shirt brand that just talked about mental health. And I just tried to keep that message of, if you're struggling, put this t-shirt on. If you want to talk, put this t-shirt on. And if you want to have that understanding and that conversation with your friends, then put this t-shirt on too. So that's essentially where it started. And, 5 years on, 5 years on, we're now a national charity. We're able to continue doing all that, continue to get these t-shirts out there and hoodies and stuff as conversation starters. And that's now my full-time gig. I don't have the gyms anymore. I sold all them last year. I suppose I just had a bit of a shift in passion. It's been a massive journey, but it's something that's definitely changed my life and changed her life. And it's something I'm really, really passionate about.
That's amazing that you can, use your time now doing something that you're so passionate about, and obviously you love it. I see that, like when I saw you at the mental health conference, I clocked you from the shirt because I was across the room and I saw the Shaka walk past. I'm like, oh, hello.
Yeah. And that's exactly what we want. We want it to be, a really recognizable logo. We have logos like, Nike and Apple and all this sort of stuff. And, they're things that you see and you trust. If you see an Apple product, majority of us are going to trust it. And that's exactly what I want with the Shaka. I want people to be able to see the Shaka and trust, right, this is somebody that I can go up and talk to. I can go and be vulnerable to, and I can have a conversation with about mental health and not feel that awkwardness. And I've been blessed to hear so many amazing stories of people, sitting in a country New South Wales pub by themselves, wearing a Shaka t-shirt, and somebody walking in, going straight over to them and saying, hey, let's have a beer together. And people becoming friends and becoming mates just through the Shaka, just through the t-shirt. And that doesn't happen. You don't see that happen in a pub. I can't walk into a pub here and go up to a random guy and start sitting down and talk about my vulnerabilities. He'd probably look at me a bit weird. So, well, if we put a bit of an icebreaker there, get someone wearing a Shaka t-shirt, then that's a big neon sign that says, hey, come and talk to me if you need to. I have empathy or I have understanding for mental health. And if you want to chat, I'm here. If you don't want to chat, I'm still here. So that's the idea about it. We've heard some amazing stories that's been happening in real life, and that's all I can ask for. It's beautiful.
I had a 40th birthday party recently, and one of my very, very good friends from high school came in a Shaka shirt. And I said, "Oh my God." I made him get a photo, but I don't know whose phone it was on, so I haven't found it yet. But I'm like, I've got to send this to Sean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love seeing it. We recently had a comment on Instagram. They were on a cruise somewhere, and there was a family there that were wearing the Shaka t-shirt, and although they didn't go and talk to them, they saw it and they thought that's really cool because they've had their mental health issues and they can physically see, hey, those people over there, they may not have had personal issues, but maybe they've experienced poor mental health, or they may have experienced loss, or they just have empathy and care for it. So automatically they have that some sort of connection with them, and it's really beautiful. And I was at Melbourne Airport just a few weeks ago, and my flight was actually cancelled. So I was sitting there trying to book another flight. Actually, it was the night before the mental health conference. I was cancelled the night before, so I was on my laptop frantically trying to book another flight. And a woman kept walking past me and smiling, and then she walked the other way and kept smiling, and okay, what's going on here? And then she finally got up to me and said, "Oh, are you from the Shaka?" I said, "Yeah, I am." And she said, "Come around here." And I walked around the corner, and here's her husband and her two kids all wearing Shaka.
Hey.
And it just made me so happy. It almost brought a tear to my eye just to see, firstly, the kids wearing it. That's just so beautiful to me that those parents are saying to these kids, this is a cool jumper, it's a cool logo, that's great, but this is what it means. And this is what it's all about. So I know that those kids are going to grow up in a household that they can openly talk about what they're experiencing, what they're going through, and that's just beautiful. It just makes me so happy to know that there's another family like mine that we're able to talk about it. And, you never know what those kids are going to be able to grow up and make an impact on when it comes to mental health too. So, in 10 years, there might be a Shaka Project point too that those kids are created. That's exactly what I want, just more conversation, more people talking about it too. So, there's been some amazing moments.
That's so cool. And it keeps you going, right? Like seeing that happen.
Oh, gosh,
Yeah, it's better than anything else, just to know that you're actually having that impact.
Just to see people, I think it's really brave as well. I talk about this a lot with people, talking about what's going on in your life can be really hard. And talking about, or even just being vulnerable can be really hard. So whenever I see somebody wearing a Shaka t-shirt or a hoodie out in public, the first thing I think of is that person is so brave, because not only are they saying, hey, I have empathy, understanding, come up and talk to me, but they're also possibly saying, hey, I struggle with mental health. And that's the hardest thing we can start a conversation about. So when I see that, I just want to give them a massive hug and just say, you are the MVP. You are so brave for wearing this out, for being in public and essentially, again, holding up a neon sign saying, I struggle with mental health, or I do struggle with mental health, or I may have lost so much through mental health. And I just think it's such a brave thing to do, just to, hold that sign up proudly wherever you are, and just allow people to come and talk to you. I think it's just incredible, absolutely incredible.
Yeah, I totally agree. I see that you've had your run for our mate campaign, and you've got some amazing results. I wrote them down because I was so happy for you. 38,271 kilometers, and you've managed to raise $206,992, which enables you to, I guess, get out there and do more mental health programs and get out into the schools and run more workshops there. Is that what you're going to do now?
Exactly, yeah. It's been absolutely unbelievable. When I sat down and planned this campaign, I remember sitting in my lounge room in Feb going, right, I want to do this for the whole month. And I set a goal of at least 50 runners. And, I thought I'd be able to get that pretty easy. I wanted to get 3,249 kilometres completed for the entire month, which, what do we do? 38,000?
38,271, yeah. Smashed it.
And maybe we'll be able to run we will. Um, and I launched it. And I remember before we even hit March, we had raised $100,000.
Far out.
And it was unbelievable. It was just incredible. So we had 955 runners altogether from all across the world. We had Australia, UK, New Zealand, a couple in the United States as well. It was just unbelievable how many people picked this up. And I think the best thing about the social media that we saw from people doing this challenge was them getting together with their friends and just going for a run or going for a walk. It's great that we're able to hit our kilometre target and smash the fundraising target. That's great, but to be able to see people, calling their mate and say, "Hey, let's get together and go for a run." We all know exercise is great for our mental health, but exercise with our friends is even better. And that was more powerful to see than the amount of money we raised or the amount of kilometres we ran. It was just people getting together. I had multiple messages of people saying, "Hey, in Feb, I was really, beating myself up. My fitness had gone down the gurgler, so I did this challenge, and now I'm feeling great. I'm back in the fitness. I'm feeling happy. I'm feeling better. I'm able to go and do things again and run around with the kids and all those different things." So although it was great for us and great for us, our ability to be able to do more with all this, 955 people went out there and worked their ass off for a month, ran 100 kilometres. That was the personal goal. It was tough. I only just got it. I had the day before it ended. I think I was in Perth for 2 of the weeks, so I didn't run a whole lot. So 3 days in a row, I had to run 10 kilometres, which almost killed me, but I got there eventually. So it was a really, really tough personal challenge for a lot of people, but that was a really beautiful thing to see out of it. And yeah, so now we're able to, with those funds raised, we're able to do countless, free events for schools, which we've already signed up 5 schools. So we're up to New South Wales in a couple of weeks, South Australia next week for a school, and Central Coast as well next week, to be able to get into these high schools and do these free events for them and continue to ignite that conversation. We're able to go to footy clubs. A lot of footy clubs, it's tough to get these events because obviously, it costs us to fly there, to accommodate us and all that sort of stuff too. But now we can say, right, if we can work this out, we'll be there at no cost, and we can go there and we can do these events. And that's all thanks to these donations. It's all thanks to 955 people that put on the runners and got out there with their friends. And now we're going to be able to reach thousands of more Australians, especially young Australians, and continue that conversation on too. So it's been unbelievable. I don't think I definitely didn't expect so many people to get behind it, but it just goes to show how many people are passionate about this conversation.
Yeah. The tides are changing, right? Like
Oh yeah,
you can feel it.
You definitely can feel it. And I think there's just a few areas where we have to keep on tinkering with and keep that conversation, loud as we possibly can. But the tide is changing. I think it probably has been for the last couple of years, even post-COVID. But there's still those few conversations we need to keep having and keep reigniting. I think is a really good thing we can do. Mental health is every day, so we probably should be talking about it every day. That's why you see so many posts on our Instagram. I try and post 3 times a day just to keep on reigniting that and keep people thinking about it.
Yeah. And that's another thing I really love about what you do is how simple your posts are. You know, like you fucking matter. How simple is that? Yeah. And it's so true.
Yeah, I try and keep it really authentic. A lot of people always ask me, who runs your social media? I do every single post, and it's very, very raw, very, very authentic. I always say this, if you see a post that says "be fucking kind," it usually means that I've had a run-in with someone that wasn't very kind to me.
Yeah.
And I just think, oh God, that sucks. Right, let's put this message out there. Sometimes if I'm having a really rough day, there might be a post that says, keep going and keep pushing through. It's not always related to what's happening in that day, but it's just the things that I'm feeling and things that I'm going through myself. And, I've had many people say, "Hey, I'll do your social media for you. I'll run all your media." There's just no way because it has to be raw. It has to be authentic. There's people that approach us and say, "Hey, why do you have to swear when it comes to mental health?" I'm like, well, that's real.
It is
You know,
real.
that's life. You know, if I just tiptoed around this message, then we tiptoed around and the result is to make an impact. So it has to be raw. It has to be authentic. You know, in my presentations, not in schools, obviously, but if I'm talking to a footy club, I'll swear, I'll get really, you know, passionate and raw and authentic about it because that's me, and that's the level of passion I have for this. If I was to get up there and talk really nice and polite and all those different things, I think people would see straight through it and, you know, not be able to attach themselves because, let's be honest, we swear,
Yep.
we are connected to swear words. So are most kids. So if we can connect on every single level of emotion, and something that I learned throughout my, you know, years of owning gyms is that emotion sells. And although we're not trying to sell anything through our social media posts, we're trying to get attention. And emotion gets attention, emotion sells. So if people can see something that makes them laugh, they're going to be attached to it. If they can see something that makes them feel good, they're going to get attached to it. If they see something that they want to share, like you fucking matter, they're going to get attached to it. So I think it's a really powerful thing to be able to be have that raw authenticity about what you do that gets that message across. It makes it a little bit more impactful as well. Yeah, no apologies for the swearing.
And my mum pulled me up once for swearing. She sent me a message. She's like, "What's this about? Why are you swearing on social media?" I'm like, "Because that's how I talk."
You're right. You got to be raw. You got to be authentic. It's just, you know, if you don't do that, people see straight through it.
Yeah.
I think that's the best thing about you know, being able to do my own social media is I've got a few friends that have mental health charities as well, and they've got, you know, high up boards of people in suits sitting there, and they put red flags on everything and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah.
And you know, they can't post things like that. They have to post things that are very much, you know, surrounded by flowers and you know, something that is ethical in people's eyes. And that's great to be ethical. That's amazing, but people connect to raw.
Yeah.
People connect to things that are real and authentic too. So I think that's somewhere I'm very, very blessed to be in that position where I can do it all myself, and I can have that openness and that conversation from my heart. And it's also really helpful for me too. You know, if I'm going through a rough stage and I put up a post that says keep on going, and I see 2,000 people like it, I think, well, those 2,000 people are telling me to keep going. You know, those 2,000 people are saying, "Yep, Sean, keep going. You know, keep doing what you're doing." And everyone that shares a post and does this and does that, I always say to our ambassadors, you know, when you share a post, you're opening up a door for people. So if you share a post to maybe 50 people see it on your story, 50 people now see that, hey, if I'm ever in trouble, if I'm ever in strife, if I'm ever going through something, this person is my first point of call. And that can make a real big impact on people. The amount of messages that I've got from people to say, hey, I shared a post about mental health, and my mate messaged me and said, hey, I love that message. I've been struggling. And then opened up conversation. That's just, yeah, that's exactly what we want, to be able to share that and for people to be able to see it and say, right, if I'm ever in strife, this is the person I can speak to. And it just opens up that door for that conversation.
Yeah. That's how we change the world.
Absolutely. One post at a time.
Yeah. One post, one conversation, one moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's so beautiful. To wrap up, do you have any advice for anyone having a tough time today?
Yeah, be kind to yourself. This is, as you mentioned before, this is everybody's first go at life. You know, nobody's ever succeeded at life, in quotation.
Yeah.
You know, this is our first time. So be kind to yourself. That's I think we don't do that enough. We are constantly criticizing ourselves, and I think the majority of that has got to do with comparison and seeing what everybody else is doing. But you know, if you can be kind to yourself and love yourself most, I think that's a really big step towards making sure that the next, you know, 2 weeks or 6 months in your life are going to be a little bit easier. And just forgiving yourself, you know, forgiving yourself for fucking it up sometimes or not getting it 100% sometimes. Nobody has it 100%. You know, we look on social media at these quotation influencers, and they're constantly promoting that they've got the most amazing life, and they're waking up at 4 a.m. and having their ice baths and their acai bowls and all that sort of stuff, and their life's great, but I can guarantee that they're struggling.
Yeah.
I can guarantee that they're going through something, but they're not going to share that. So stop comparing yourself. Comparisons are a thief of all joy. Be kind to yourself, even if you're having a bad day, and it's okay to seek your support if you need to.
Yeah. I agree. Be kind to yourself always. Yeah. Thanks so much for coming on, Sean. It's been an amazing conversation. Thank you for everything you're doing with the Shaka Project and for sharing your story so openly, because I know it's helping so many people, and you know it too. You can see it when people wear your shirts. I will share all of your details in our show notes for anyone that wants to check out the Shaka Project or buy a shirt or gift a shirt to one of their friends. Thanks again for joining me. It's been just so wonderful.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it.
I hope you've enjoyed today's episode. If you have, make sure to hit subscribe so you never miss any new ones. We release fresh content every Tuesday. And while you're there, take a moment to leave us a review. I would genuinely appreciate your thoughts. Don't forget to connect with me on Instagram and Facebook at Tactical Yoga Australia, and share this episode with your friends, family and workmates to spread inspiration. Your support means the world. My name is Rosie Skene. Join me again next week for another empowering and positive episode of Triumph Beyond Trauma. Until then, be kind to your mind and trust in the magic of your consistent and positive efforts. Triumph beyond your trauma is closer than you think. Have the best week.